So anyhow, the 3 most common mistakes for geographic farming. And here's the first one. The first one starts off with inconsistency. Most people, when it comes to farming, are just inconsistent. It's not a magic pill. It is not just happening overnight like this, right? We're not just turning on the lead faucet like this. Yes, there should be leads, but not just trickling down based on, sending a mailer once. That just doesn't happen. But with a strategy in place, and again, I'm working currently on Mailer Mom, by the way. I'm going to release to you right now. It's going to be Mailer Mom. And what it is building your business during nap time. And this is based on consistency. Everything is plug and play. And when I say consistency, how does your farming efforts look? Is it like, oh, it's been a while, it's been like 5 weeks since I sent something last? Or is it something where you're really like clockwork, really being proactive about pursuing it? One of the examples I always give is, let's take it back. I'm a mom. Many of you guys know I'm a mom. And right now we are signed up for baseball, all right? So when we signed up for baseball, we made the commitment. We made the commitment for the season, and baseball, it's 2.5 months, right? But we made the commitment for the season to be there every single practice, every single game. And for every single practice and every single game, I make sure that somebody is there consistently to get the kid from A to B, from wherever he's at to the baseball field. And this commitment is something that we will make in our personal life for other people. But for our businesses, many times we just shortcut ourselves and we stop. And the question is why? Why do we do it? There's really no reason many times that people just put a stopper in between their commitment to their family, their commitment to their health goals, their commitment to their business goals. It's all a matter of commitment. So how committed are you to making something work? You need to be consistent when it comes to geographic farming efforts. And the reason is people want to feel secure with you as their choice. They want to know you're not just a one-day fly. One day you're here, the next day you're not. You want to make sure you consistently show up for those clients. So number 1 is consistency. My recommendation is always to commit to something for a minimum of 12 months. Now, I'm also going to tell you, I do not think you need to send 12-month worth of mailers. I actually ended up building my business with only 8 out of Actually, I started out with 6 out of 12 mailers, and then I grew it to 8 out of 12. So I think this year might be one of the first years I'm going to come close to mailing once a month. And that's kind of mind-boggling because everybody tells you, like, you have to mail once a month, you have to mail every 3 weeks, you have to mail. And it's like, it's a lot of money, guys. So why not shortcut it and actually get a system in place that lets you mail and get the return a lot faster with a lot less spending? Like, how many of you guys are like, yes, please somebody? And I promise you it works based on what kind of mailers we're sending. So number 1, inconsistency. We need to be consistent. And consistency is not necessarily once a month I need to send it. Consistency has a lot of different forms. So as long as you're consistent, this is the most important thing when it comes to your geographic farming efforts. All right. Who thought this was probably a no-brainer here? Drop it in the comments. It is me and in the computer screen, and it's really boring to talk to myself. So let me know in the comments. Say hi. Have a conversation, right? I'm like, I love to chat with all of you. And the next thing we want to talk about, number 2, when it comes to the most common mistakes to geographic farming, is poor messaging. Poor messaging. What's poor messaging? You might think, well, what's the wrong message? What should I send? That's probably one of the biggest ones. What should I send? And the question is, who is in your neighborhood? Who is your neighborhood made up of most, and who is your ideal target? So, for example, if I am looking to find the tenants, the renters in my neighborhood, if I have a big population of people that are renting, and I just want to go after them, I'd probably not be telling them anything about upsizing. I will probably not say, hey, you know what? It's time to trade your home in for the next bigger size up. Because guess what? They haven't even made it to the first shoe size, right? I'm like, we can't just skip ahead. They're going to start stumbling. So what we want to make sure is that our message matches our neighborhood makeup. And you wonder, how do I even know how my neighborhood is made up? There is ways for you to get to know those statistics, to really know who lives in my neighborhood. And when I say my neighborhood, I'm talking to your geographic farm neighborhood, not necessarily the neighborhood that you live in. So poor messaging is probably the most common thing I see. And honestly, guys, like I see a lot about it. I love getting mailers from other people in my neighborhood that are sending, and I just look at them and I see them as like kind of like teaching material. And I ask other agents constantly, like, do you get any mailers? Like, can you save them? Because I love looking at them for various reasons. And the most common one I really see is just poor messaging. You send a mailer, and most often that mailer is procuring not much at all. So when it comes to, oh, that's a whole paragraph there. I want to have to read that. When it comes to, your message, you need to be very clear. It's not about you. It's not about how great of an agent you are. Your buyers and your sellers don't care how many awards you have in your pocket. They don't. It doesn't make a difference if you are the top 1%, the top 5%, the top 10%. What matters most to them is, how will you be on my side? How will you have my back? Unless you are straight up going for investors where it's like straight up numbers, because there is, I shouldn't say there's no emotion. There's emotion in there, but less than with our regular buyers and sellers. So let's see. We got Brianna. You said you mailed 3,500 mailers for your farm now. How many did you start with? When did you get your first listing from them? And when did you bump up your farm size? I just started last week. Mail list is 3,600. Doing about 1,000 mailers a week versus 3,600 at one time. Okay. If you just started farming or just started the business, that has two different things. What you want to look at is your cost over the long term. Because if you just put all your money into the front end and you don't have enough money to be consistent, and you're going to fizzle out because you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't gotten anything yet, but yet I spent 75% of my budget, that's where most agents go wrong. So here's where I started. Yes, I'm slightly under 5,000. So this year I bumped it from one farm into two farms. So my one farm is 3,500 mailers. I did not start there. And what I started with was 400. 400 routes is where I started out at. And then from those 400, I had one listing out of it fairly quickly. Now, from that 400, that one listing in my marketplace, you're looking at about a $5,000 average commission return for the agent part. Okay. So now that listing, I took that one and I blew it up. I doubled my mailing size, and I want to make sure that I reach more people. But that was by keeping it consistently going. So I did not go from 400 to 4,000 because I wouldn't have been able to sustain it financially. So it's kind of like, like a spread, like a small spread. You just go from one area and you spread out. You get bigger and you get bigger and you get bigger, right? And you always want to keep growing so you have that under your belt. Now, that's me starting as a brand new agent with zero budget, okay? All right, so you said you've been in real estate 6 months, you have a budget set aside. So you're good on that. Now it says for 6 months postage and postcards. I will tell you, we're on number 2 right now. poor messaging. Your messaging needs to be super strong. You cannot just send mailers that are, poor on messaging. So number one, consistency. It seems like you have that one down. You want to make sure that you have some sort of schedule. Number two, your messaging. Your messaging needs to match the neighborhood. Now, those are the first two. What else are we going to need? And that is number three. That is your number, or also known as your turnover rate. Now, I'm a huge number nerd when it comes to, numbers in general, but calculating a turnover rate is something that is super important when it comes to geographic farming. Reason being, you want to be in a farm where people are actually selling. Because if they're just holding on for houses of like, oh yeah, they've been here for 30 years, they've been here for 23, they've been here for 17, you don't have this, turnover in there in order for your numbers to work. So when it comes to turnover rates, the biggest question people have is, what's a good turnover rate? What should it be? What should we do? And the answer is really, it depends. It varies. Now, personally, I can tell you my turnover rate is ideally between 8 to 10%. Now, that's pretty big on a turnover rate in most markets. Like if I have an 8 to 10% turnover rate, love that one. Now, if you have a turnover rate that is slightly lower, 6 to 8%, you still have a very, very good margin in it. Now, how do you get the turnover rate? You simply take the houses that are in that particular area and you divide it by the sales per year. And I do recommend you go back a couple years, okay? So that is your turnover rate. So many times do we have neighborhoods of 4%, of 3%. It just doesn't seem feasible unless you have other motivations to be in it. I have one agent where it's very important that she dominates the farm that she lives in. Now, if that's your goal, that's fine. Just be prepared that your monetary spend will be different. Okay, so let's recap the 3 most common mistakes agents make when it comes to geographic farming. Number one, I don't know if I can have somebody type it in the comments, but number one was inconsistency. I gave you the example of we commit our kids to do a sport. We want them to be at the games consistently. We want them to be at practices consistently. Yet we are failing as parents to set the same boundaries for ourselves. Show up for your business consistently and your business will grow. Fact. Now, number 2 is poor messaging. Most agents make the mistake of making their messaging always all about them. Look at my awards. Look at how much I've done. Look at this. Look at that. The consumer doesn't care. They just don't care how many beautiful awards, trophies, or anything you have on the wall. And number 3 is your turnover rate. Know your numbers. If you're going into a neighborhood with poor numbers, you will see a poor return. And that pretty much sums it up for tonight. So my goal is to continue this FAQ kind of style live with you guys. And as mentioned, if you've seen the post from about a week ago, many of you have asked for a plug-and-play system. So I'm working currently on a plug-and-play system. I'm hoping I kind of have some of the stuff ready and set, where you get my mail pieces, you get my entire system, where you can just go and plug your information in. I'm actually helping you find a printing service, and it's all said and done. So it doesn't get much easier than that. So anyhow, I hope this was helpful for some of you guys. And if you have questions, DM me the questions. Drop them in the group. Let me know. Like, Brianna, thank you so much for just engaging tonight and getting me all the questions. And get your questions answered, guys. I've been doing this for a while. I actually see a 10x return on my postcard mailers, and I closed 6 figures because of it, which is pretty amazing because I get to spend time with my kids at the park, bringing them to school, walking them down there. I get to hang out with them, and it's like, when it comes down to building my business, this is kind of what I wanted in the entire long run, right? Have my cake and eat it too. And you can do the same. So hopefully this was helpful. I'm going to wrap up tonight. And if you have any other questions, drop them in the group. I'll look forward to seeing you there. Good night, guys.